Hi, everyone. Welcome to Meet the Matriarchs, Women in the Struggle, hosted by the Warrior Women Project. My name is Dawnee LeBeau, and I will be your MC for this afternoon. We're coming to you live from the Heisaka Mokoche, the Black Hills Lakota Nation, um, at the close of Women's History Month, and we're excited and honored that you are joining us today. So with that, let's begin, and we'll go ahead and have you meet the matriarchs.
So I will get started first. I'm going to introduce my mother, Madonna Thunderhawk. And if you've seen the film, you know who she is. I do want to say that I just want to remind everybody that before the pandemic, we took a trip to Boston. At, what was the
Simmons University.
Simmons University, and she got a honorary doctorate. So I just wanted to share that with everybody. This is Dr. Madonna Thunderhawk. And then this is her younger sister, Mable Ann, Eagle Hunter. Both of them reside on the Cheyenne River. All of us live on Cheyenne River. My mom goes back and forth between Cheyenne River and Pine Ridge. Mable Ann is considered our she holds down the part of our family, the spiritual part of it. So we go to her for advice and that kind of thing is related to our anything that has to do with our kinship, anything that has to do with our relationships with each other or ourselves. She's been a counselor for how many years? 33 years in the counseling area. So we depend a lot on her as a family, and so Mable Ann, Eagle Hunter.
So we'll go to Lakota in just a second, but my name is Beth Castle. Hi. And I started on the journey to the Warrior Women Project 22 years ago, writing some kind of school paper that led to my doctorate. And then we got involved in community, and ever since it's been about the goal of telling those unknown histories that people don't know, and once they know it, they can't unlearn it, and it changes how you look at the world. And what did you think when you first met me, Thunderhawk? Dr. Thunderhawk? What was your anthropological opinion as I appeared at your door?
Well, Dr. Castle. No, it was an amazing thing now that I think back, because up until that point, well, let's say ever since Wounded Knee 73. After that, I was getting a lot of referrals from the different people in the movement that got requests for interviews and stuff like that. For some reason, I think they were kind of like sloughing them off to me. So I was getting a lot of requests, and and I knew a lot of it was academic stuff. They were writing a paper or whatever. And they make me all kinds of promises, I'll let you read this before I use it or print it or whatever, and that never happened. So I got to the point where I was thinking, I'm not going to do this anymore, I never hear from these people back and whatever. And I get this letter. First time someone, well, of course, this is before South Point era, I got a letter, and real nice letter, real short, and going and doing paper. She was from her academic stuff, and she was doing research, and she was coming out to South Dakota, and she wanted to interview as many women of the Red Power movement as she could. And I thought, got my attention right away, because she said women of, she didn't say Madonna, continue your story, whatever. She said women of the Red Power movement. So I thought, okay, this is good. So I said, good, okay. She said, call me Colette. So I said, okay. So I had a landline. Well, in those days we just called it pen and telephone, And I tacked the letter up above the phone, And then, she's coming that fall in October. And one day I was talking on the phone, and I started fiddling with that paper while I was talking. And I looked, and it was like October 1st, so she was going to be there in a matter of days. So then I thought, oh my God. So I picked up the phone and called her. And she came out. And one day, I forgot about it, of course. One day, knocked, opened the door, and there she stood. And the first thing I thought was, like she stepped out of the 60s, you know? She had a backpack, you know, like she hitchhiked in, you know? So I was so happy to see her, and I said, come on in. She came in, she sat down, put her gear down, and this was the test, okay, because this happened before. I said, you want something to drink? And she looked up, she said, yeah, sure, drink $20. There, put that down. So I went in and got, I think it was ice or something. And I came and I set it down and I just watched her. And she said, oh, thank you. And she grabbed it and took it. That was a first because there was other people that had come and I would offer them. It was almost like they didn't really want to come in, interviewers, non-native. And then they would sit down, but they'd be straight up, you know. And if I offered them something to drink, usually they wouldn't drink it. And that was before Bobby, everything, you know, Bobby. So I thought, well, here we go, you know. So after that, and now she's part of our family. You know, you can't leave now. You're part of the family. That's it. You don't have
Now you're making the tea.
You can't resign this family. You're in.
Yeah. Well, I never told you that it was really hard to drink the tea because I wanted Splenda, but I was too afraid to ask. But I knew better, so I'm like, I'm gonna chug this tea. I'm gonna get it over with. But yeah, we'd like to talk about like those issues very much about what are relationships, what's accountability, how you keep it real, and still put out, you know, honor the thing that we started off with, which is how do we keep proliferating and getting these unknown stories out there. And even if they're new to a lot of people now, they're your history and how do we honor that. And I think if we could, you know, and this is important, this brings in Lakota Harden, because it was Lakota whose name I found, who I contacted and said, you know, I was trying to create a web, like there wasn't even like who would these people be, and how to figure out how to follow the trail. So I contacted Lakota, and she, you know, I was just learning right away, just, you know, sort of protocol, because she said that I needed to speak with her, you know, her aunties first, and gave me Madonna, you know, Mable's name. And I was wondering, Marcy, if you could introduce your sister in that light,
Sure.
and then she could introduce you.
Okay, so those of you who have seen the film, you've seen her, Lakota Harden. She's my older sister, and she is a very worldly person. She's been all over the world. She's been involved with the movement for many of her years. She's also spent time counseling and doing a lot of anti-racism work, and you know, and she continues to do all of that. Right now, she's living in Alaska with her children and grandchildren. So I'll hand it over to my sister, Cody.
Hello, everybody. This is talking to you from Tlingit Ani, which is the land of the Tlingit people. And my mother, first of all, I'm the daughter of Ian Scawi, who is Marilyn, who is Madonna and Mable Ann's older sister. And the way that we were raised, they were all our mothers, all three of them, and then our Auntie Phyllis. So we have these four winds as our mothers. And I just also wanted to acknowledge Ina Mable Ann, because in the introduction, I wanted to jump in, you know, because from the time I could remember, she has been a nurturing mother. She's the one that makes sure that we're fed, makes sure we have a place to stay, makes sure our friends are fed. So it's more than advice. She really has been that nurturing, you know, making, you know, my first beadwork that I did, my first pipe bag that I made, she said, here, handed me the materials and said, do this, you know. So that's who she's been to all of us. It's that foundation of our family of all of our extended family and other people's extended family. So I just wanted to start off saying that because, my mother left this world to the spirit world quite a while ago, and both Madonna and Mable and Phyllis have really stepped in to make sure that we're cared for and thought of, and helps us in any way we can. So I think that's really the foundation of the movement, is families caring about each other. So I just wanted to start off saying that because that's the most important part of who I am. And I got to see my mother and her sisters laugh and cry together and depend on each other all of my life. I spent part of my life in my mother's household, but I spent lots of other years in their two households. And a lot of times they were the same household. So I think in all my memories, that's the most important thing, is that I was always surrounded by my sisters and brothers, and I was the oldest, and that didn't mean I was oldest of my sibling. I was the oldest of all of our generation. So I have that do the right thing, in me anyway. So I also wanted to talk about Marcy because she has been amazing from the time she was little, and we've been really close and always kept in touch to this day, about first as kids of how we do things, and now we're grandmothers. How do we be grandmothers together, So Marcy got her master's degree. Did you get your Ph.D. too, or you're on your way to that? She got her master's degree also, and is building a community, which we'll probably talk about in a little while. But I admire her. I'm her big sister, but she's also been my right-hand woman. She's been there for me no matter what, and we've kept each other close. So this is the reason I'm talking about this, is that these are the foundations of what we need as we decolonize, as we rematriate in this world. We have to make sure that and it doesn't necessarily have to be your blood family, but your tioshpai, creating relatives, being a good relative. That's the basis. And luckily we were raised that way. So I didn't just read about it in a book. I was raised with this responsibility, with this accountability. And that's why when Beth came to me and wanted to talk to me about my experience, I said, oh no, you have to go to my matriarchs first, out of respect for these women and Grandma Faith, and learning our history. It's been the women all along, since before the invasion, before colonization. It's been the women that have really held our families together, and I've seen it all my life. And in the stories of our history and knowing those stories, it's been the women. So thank you, Wopila.
Thank you, Lakota. I want to take just a quick moment to say that we're starting on this journey. Glad that I'm hoping that a few of you were with us in previous events with Matriarchs. We're having some growing pains as we establish relationships and partnerships and doing this show that we're trying today. And we're having some challenges with the audio, which I want you to know, simply because we have to be careful how we hand the audio off so you don't hear feedback. And we didn't want to miss this chance to come to you anyway. But that's just letting you know why we're being a little careful, because normally it would be really rowdy. It'd be like, can't get a word in edgewise, just talking over elders, how we do. That's me being funny, and I've been telling you, so you can laugh now. But basically, that was important to know, and we're here with you. And what we're going to do is still do our best to follow the schedule, truncate it a little bit, but I'd like to let Dawnee explain just sort of what our short plans are for the rest of the time we have.
So thank you all again for being here with us. Just a little bit of housekeeping. We're going to be having this discussion here, and then we're going to be taking questions from the audience with Q&A. So if you have questions, please place them in the chat, and we will get to them after our intermission here. For those of you who've registered with the Eventbrite, we'll be doing a swag giveaway in the middle of all this, so stay tuned for that. We'll be also sharing some media with y'all, and we will offer some plugs at the end of the session here so that y'all can see where you can access those. I'll pass it back.
Thank you, Dawnee. I wanted to sort of throw the first question out there with a little bit of context that, part of what we're trying to do is shift the narrative and shift even how we talk about it. So, for example, we are honoring the veterans and wounded knee. We're recognizing how important and how much that event transformed so many things. But part of what we want to include in that is everything that's already been brought up, which is how do you understand kinship and networks and systems of support, and how an occupation or an event or a community actually is drawing on that in Indian country to make it work. And so often we hear so few of the stories of the people who are the ones that hold it all up and all together. And what I wanted to just start off with is just a framing question of, who would you describe? And I know that Lakota, you'll be going into this with a little more depth after our break, but could you tell me who the matriarchs were in your life prior to what we know as the movement, but the folks who really gave you a strong grounding in who you are and set you on a path? Dawnee, would you like to start?
Yeah.
Okay. And talk about matriarchy.
Matriarchy, okay, yeah. Well, growing up, and it started when I was really young, but we even knew that word, in English word, matriarchy. But we just took it for granted, I guess, growing up. Because the one that influenced our family, our extended family, and set us on the path of our first cousin brothers, we call them brothers. First cousins were like our brothers, was my maternal grandmother, Mable Archon. And she, during World War, going way back now, during World War II, when we were little children, she took care of us during those years, because all my parents and aunts and uncles were all either in the military in World War II or were in the war effort. For example, my mother was a welder in the shipyards, and she welded destroyers and vehicles, vessels that were damaged in the war. So my grandmother was the first with us that I can remember being 3, 4, and 5 years old, that the influence she had at the time. So yeah, it started with her, and then it was just automatic. Because now when I think back, stability in our extended family were always the women, the mothers and the aunties, and the uncles and fathers were there, but they didn't have that much influence. But I think that was part. It wasn't a big deal, because I think that's a part of what, outside of being colonized people, the things that the remnants of our ancestors' lifeways, which was a matriarchal society. So we're fortunate to still have that, at least in my lifetime and up to now as an elder.
Well, it's real hard for me to speak sometimes following Madonna, because she covers a lot of, not necessarily what I think, ideas, but in the same, context. And to me, it was always like she said, my grandma took us hard. Growing up, the mothering, the real nurturing, caring part, it was missing because of what was done to our mother in boarding school. You know, the whole thing about she didn't learn parenting. She stayed there summers and all, her smaller siblings. So at boarding school, she kind of looked out for them. You know. So she lost that nurturing, that part of it with grandma. So with me, grandma too was real strong. Not only in that sense, but that little part that was missing with me. And I spent, you know, a lot of summers with her. We all spent different summers with different relatives. And of course, that's how we got close with the other guys. But spending time with grandma, and she taught me how to be, she taught me how to do all these things. From my mother to my own patience. As I got older, I could totally understand the whole fight, you know. So, it was always Grandma Twinkle Star, our Grandma Aggie, that helped raise our mother and her siblings. I mean, that's where we have our family cemetery now. Grandma Aggie Stricker. She played an important part in the whole, and with the Christian. What else is Christian? But those kind of values that were taught with Christianity, you know, and some of them were, you know, real close to the values we have. But just having those women and different other, the strong women like Aunt Theo, who was a part of my life was good. My aunt, and she had a lot to do with, you know, being more of a nature and things that I learned from her.
I mean, I'm just saying, you told, you know, really want to hold the two of you up, you know, have your relationship. Also,
Well, I think Madeline brought up a good point about the whole boarding school system, you know, that happened. And, because my grandmother, you know, late 1800s, she went to boarding school. I mean, that was it. That was what's happening in those days. And so my mother, of course, went. But like Madeline said, my mother spent year-round in the boarding school system. In the 30s, when the whole country was in the Great Depression, so there was no kind of, you know, social welfare system at any time. So her and her siblings spent the year round in boarding school so they could have food to eat, you know. So yeah, and then when it came to our generation, it was kind of like, again, colonization. It was almost a way of thinking and doing that. We went to boarding school. Especially for high school, because that was all there was in this case, was a boarding school where the high school was. But up until that point, it wasn't so much that our mother said, oh no, I want them to go. We went. Because that's how people felt. That was the way things were in those days, because, you know, colonization. And then up until the 30s, you know, and people were under the War Department. So that whole mentality, that mindset, you know, had a lot to do with it. But because we had, I think we had that strong beginning in our matriarchal grandmother. And my oldest brother, cousin, Bill Powell, he was the oldest grandchild. He's the one that named her Grandma Pinker Star. And so we all grew up calling her that. So that was her name, Grandma Pinker Star. But with her influence and her teaching in those early years, that's what carried us through, I believe.
So then she was the one that you said she had her own business in Huron. And was she the one who would write letters to the governor or the president?
Well, yeah. Again, going back to World War II, she left the reservation. She was on the reservation. She was, and I to this day, I believe now that I think about it, that Christianity, formal Christian, you know, church thing, organized religion, was her way out. I think that's what she used it as a way out. Because she lived in one of the towns in the eastern part of the state of South Dakota called Huron, South Dakota. And as a real young child, I remember being there with her in her home. And she bought her own home and she had a small business there. And I remember she played the organ, so she cannot believe, because I remember going to several different churches. It wasn't just one. I didn't know. All I know is that we had to go and sing in Dakota. We had to sing "Jesus Loves Me," and every one of us dreaded it. Oh, as little as I was like, no, but we did. But yeah, so it's just she was. I think, like I said, her influence in her teaching, because I remember later on as I got older, I probably got the details of it, but at the time when I was real young, I remember her writing. She was really upset and she was writing, sitting at the table just writing. And I was kind of checking her out and I was wondering what was going on, but I heard her talking, to the other adults that were there, and she was saying, how one of the newspapers wrote an article about this man that was from Cheyenne River Reservation, and he was, of course, in the military, and his name was Samuel Lunsford. And because he was a war hero at that time, the newspaper wrote an article and made fun of his name, put it down. So my grandmother wrote, I remember her writing that letter, and later on I found out she wrote to the president, to the governor, and to the newspaper. And she was really upset. And that, because I remember that in detail, that really had an influence on me later. I've never really thought about it, of course, until I got older. But that's what she did. And just the fact that she left the reservation and said, I'm going to an all-white community and I'm going to make it regardless. And she did, with all her little brown grandchildren. It obviously wore off. After that, I always, I never thought twice about not. We knew we weren't welcome everywhere, but that didn't mean we didn't go. We went, and we did. So
We were the only Indian kids in that entire grade school in here. I remember that.
Yeah, that was years. Yeah, we went to the agency, a China agency, went there, and then later on in the year when we were older in school, we went back because my grandmother still lived there.
Mm-hmm.
And she was doing what, first grade, and I was in fourth. Duked it out through that school.
Yeah.
What did you say about?
Bringing out the boys to school at Huron. No, we won't go there.
Well, I heard you owned the street in front of Grandma Twinklestar's house.
Oh, yeah. Well, those little non-native kids, of course, they'd come halfway, and we'd go beat in the middle of the street, and boy, boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
Because you both weren't allowed to cross the street.
Yeah.
So you met in the middle, and you guys won.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
Listening to Lakota speak about the kinship roles that y'all are holding and the big matriarch values that we hold, this question is for you, Marcy. Speaking to how your mom was a little stronger and didn't learn the things or didn't hold on to the things that we were taught as Indigenous Lakota matriarchs. What are some things that you think that they unlearned in the middle of all of this? Or some of the kinship values that they have been holding on and uplifting and unlearned those colonized ways?
Yeah. Well, I think what she said. Anyway, I think having that courage and moving and doing no matter what. And I think that is putting yourself in a place of power and also responsibility. But I think the movement, just watching them, I knew that they were learning too, or relearning, And so there was a lot of that. The whole time was a lesson, I think, for everybody. Everybody was learning new things or relearning old things, and taking it back and using it as good as we can. You know, using it as well as we can, as well as we understood. And what I'm finding out now is it's a learning process. I'm going to be learning this till we're done, you know, because it's been taken away for so many generations, and now our people have learned a totally different way of thinking that is really foreign or opposite to our what we think we know, you know, because there aren't any other than my mom's here and those their age and older. Where is that information going to, where are we going to go to get that, you know? And even the elderly women that are alive with us, they've been through boarding school. So we don't have elders that even remember what it's like to be free. So I think it's, like I said, I learned a lot. One of the things that I learned from both these women is that, and my sister Lakota, is don't be taking any shit from anybody. You know, you decide how much crap you're gonna take. But, you know, don't just be taking it just because, you know, someone's giving it to you. If you don't agree with it, then do something about it. Or walk away or whatever. You know, whatever you do, just stand in your own power. And you know, as I lived my life, there was a lot of times when I didn't have it. You know, and so I had to thank God for my sister. She saved my life, you know, and so but it's a process that we all have to go through because we've experienced so much trauma. So getting back to that, those what we understand or what we want to understand or need from our matriarchs. And Cody said it best, you know, we need to be as nurturing as we can, because all of us need that. No matter what stage of life we're in, especially because we've been through this horrific, violent history of, you know, colonization and you know, taking away our spirituality and forced religion and, you know, everything, our educational system, everything has been violent and forceful. So we're all traumatized and we all need nurturing. And so I think learning how to take care of ourselves, you know, and I didn't learn that till way later. You know, you have to take care of yourself so you can take care of others.
Thank you.
So hopefully that answered your question.
Yes, thank you.
Well, I was thinking that we had it set up so, you know, Lakota is gonna spend time talking about Grandma Piggy Star, so I don't wanna poach from what she's planned. So before going to her to see what she might wanna add in this question of matriarchy or who the matriarchs are in your life, I don't know, the nurturing question, the last thing you said about nurturing, and I was just wanting to check in with you, Mable, and Madonna about sort of, I mean, you were just starting to go down memory lane with your own, and if there's anything you want to add or, you know, further, any other stories or ideas that are coming to you about sort of even the role that you played as sisters in this kinship network, as, you know, the way in which, yeah, just the way in which, like I was saying, we have this idea of the leaders and the doers, and we really need to be looking at everybody as doers and what is it that you do, right? Rather than this hierarchy of here's whose history is important. But you know, that's part of what we really want to have people understand. So everyone's story is important. So you know, what does this bring up for you in terms of how you both maybe see your own roles as matriarchs in the family and over the years?
You know, after what you talked about, you know, me, and that's what I can see. That's how it's been. Madonna and I, well, Marilyn also, but more so Madonna and I, because we were close in age. She was like my protector, advice giver. You know, Marilyn was always, I mean, Marilyn was there too for us, but her and I were kind of closer because we got, later on, we got sent to boarding school together and things like that. But what I found out and what I saw is that when we learned who we really were, and we got that, and it's a movement, started with a movement, and part of some of that revelation. And I could see the importance that each one of us played, you know. Like with Madonna and I, we went around together a lot of the takeovers, the actions, and everything. We experienced that together. And with her, it was a leadership. She had a leadership power. But she could speak. She's always been like that. You know, and that I could see her role. And then I could see my role and what I did. And I was always in charge of the kitchen and doing all that harder. Where's everybody going to sleep? And, you know, but I really can say that honestly because we're so close and this is what you'll do and this is what I'm going to do type thing. Well, that's what I do, you know. So I can see now as they're older, well, they brought it out, you know. So it did work that way. We provided for our strengths, you know, for each of us. And you know, I mean, it really makes me feel, I don't even know the word, but the teachings, you know, I can see that they realize it and will go on, that everybody's important. And that's the way it was in our society. Everybody had a place. You know, and I always say that. He was out there doing all the talking and organizing, and I was the beat.
You're the nurturer.
Yes, I was just busy, yeah. You know what I think?
Yeah, that definitely wasn't me.
She was too busy coordinating him. Yeah.
What doorknob? You keep the door open, you know?
Yeah.
Not bother with the doorknob. But anyway, that's basically that. But yeah, what I learned, what the American Indian movement taught me, for one thing is you didn't have to be, you know it all, learn it all just because you're native, you know? To expect, you know? There's specific, if you're good at something, that's what you do. You know? You do what you're good at, and in our day we'd say that it's for the cause, you know? You didn't push it. If you're dedicated, if you say you're gonna do something, then do it, you know? Don't wait around for pats on the back or anything else, you know? So, you know, it really helped so that everybody knew where their strengths were. I mean, that's the way I looked at it, you know, and I really depended on Mable for especially the spiritual part of it. Because it's just like anything else. You know, that's your part of it. You do it personally. You do what you do personally for the spirituality, you know. But then as a family, as an extended family, then you have that person, that matriarch, or that person that's going to take that role for the family. You know, so that those kinds of things to me are really, really important for the long haul. You know, when you think in terms of the long haul, then those things are stable, and you do the best you can. And then each, you know, piece of the ones that come after you, they have a responsibility too. So that everybody isn't just like, well, tell me what to do and I'll do it. Well, I wasn't taught that, so I don't know. Come on, you know. You have a responsibility for your age group and, you know, either, you know, lead, follow, or get out of the way. So anyway, that was, you know, where I came, basically where I was coming from, you know. And yeah, I think it really started for me when I was in first grade because I knew it. And most of them, ones my age that came in that year couldn't speak English. So it was kind of automatic that I knew what was going on, so I was telling them, okay, let's do this, don't do that, because the teachers were all non-native, and they were the ones calling the shots. So, it started then. But again, it wasn't a big deal. It was just kind of, that's the way it is. That's the way it developed, and you just go with his thing.
I have one more question for Lakota. Speaking to all of these kinship roles, because that's what I see them as, and not just like these roles that we think like we have to do. We do what we can is basically what you're saying. Whatever you're good at, whatever your strength is, that's where you are valued, and that's all you need to do, right? And that is enough, and it's abundant. So I'm just wondering, Lakota, how do you see all of these kinship roles extended into the next generation in your family?
Extended into the next generation? I'm sorry, I didn't expect that question. So well, the next
Lakota, like the next generation, what roles do you see them just going into with ease? Yeah.
Well, I don't feel like I can answer that because I live in Alaska right now, so I haven't been able to be in. I mean, I get to see and hear from my family through social media or through the phone, and so I my focus has been. I mean, all I can do is tell you about my experience. There's so much I want to say because everything they're saying, I've been writing notes because it's like, well, in my expression, I learned so much from them, and empathy and strength and nurturing, from them, and then the history from our. I got to spend time with Grandma Aggie when she was 97 and I was 7. So for me, what I can answer is that we have learned so much, and the lesson that I learned from Madonna right away, at one time when we're talking about identity, right? For Native people, how do we be Native Indigenous in the 21st century? And I remember having a hard time when we were younger, when we were teenagers, and some of the boys were giving me a hard time about something, and I won't go into the details, but I went to Madonna and I said, "This is what's going on." I was really down about it, and she told me a story basically that about the horse, about when they brought the horse to us, we didn't say, "Oh no, we don't do that." We didn't shun it because we didn't understand it. We made a relationship with that horse and became the best as Native people. We could ride underneath it and hunt. We could ride on the side. We became the best Indian horse riders. We have horse riders in our family right now, grandmothers who are riding horses, and so what she told me was, whatever there is there, it's like what Sitting Bull said, who happens to be over my shoulder here. If you see something you can use, pick it up. If it's not, don't destroy it. Just leave it alone. Someone else might need it, right? That level of respect. And so for us as older people now, trying to share with our younger people, for me, what I saw from learning from my mother, the societal norms, getting a formal education, that was drilled into us from Grandma Theo, and, all the way up, and then also the resistance at the same time. I looked at what was happening to our people in a sort of societal view, eagle's vision. And the thing, no matter what we were doing in our generation, if we were following that ladder, the white man's ladder, or if we were digging deeper into the earth with our traditional ways. No matter what we were doing, we had internalized oppression. Genocide has affected us in a way that, we were in pieces, and we have to pull those back together. And I remember Joe Lafferty saying, we were up here, we were beautiful, we had our societies, and then genocide happened, and we were broken down, our languages, our way of life, everything, and we were down here, alcoholism and ways of the effects of that. And then as we're going back up, as we're reclaiming and remembering and re-emerging as traditional peoples in our ways, we don't leave anybody behind. That's the first one. In our family, I think of my nephew Nacha, and he is a police officer on the res, which is one of the hardest jobs for a warrior to do. I think I look at them and I realize that this has been instilled in them, whether we realize it or not. That spirit of resistance and that spirit of accountability and responsibility to the rest of our family, to the rest of our people. And that's what it becomes, because our family is so many tribes. We have Danielle Means, who's over on the East Coast, and I'm on the West Coast, and we're all everywhere in between, and we're in all different areas of teaching, of nurturing, of educating, of caring for, all these things. So that's how I can answer that question. And for me to learn to decolonize our minds, to unlearn the oppression, was kind of the direction I went. And I've been doing, for 40 years, I've been doing unlearning racism workshops and looking at the internalized oppression and how it has affected us, the values that we have been buried, that as soon as a Native person, anyone I've worked with, as soon as they get a glimpse of what is true about them, that we are brilliant, that we are resisting, that we have been patient, that we are intelligent, we're beautiful, all these things, as soon as you scratch that surface in our young people, they it's like bam, they blow up and they're blossoming, and they realize that, oh yes, I am. And you see it all across social media now, all these young people, land back, all of these different things. So that's what I see, that what we have held on to. And it's the same that happened with us. Those that held on to these traditional teachings and who live them, held on to it, for those who maybe have lost it and are returning. And there's a lot of work to do. So I hope that's the question kind of threw me off, but I think I answered it best I could anyway.
Thank you, Lakota. That was perfect. That's exactly what I was expecting and hopeful for. So yes, thank you so much.
So we're gonna take a little breather, and don't you have to come back for the second part. Don't sneak out of here. Just keep an eye. Just kidding. Not really. What we want to do is a little transition and show you a little piece of media. This media is an oral history interview that I did on that trip that Madonna is talking about. When I came out to her house, I had first gone to Pine Ridge, and someone told me to meet with Geraldine Janice. And Geraldine she's a powerful woman, and I think about it, and I'm just sort of glad that I didn't know better than to just go into someone's house and ask them about Wounded Knee. So, naivete, and look where we are now. So, but I do remember as I was interviewing her, I still get this feeling as we sit here right now, where every time, the second she's finished talking, she'll go, well, what else do you want to know? I've got things to do. What else do you want to know? So it's like each time I'm like dying inside of But I just really tried hard not to do the worst thing that you do early on in the interview is just prove you know stuff. Just keep it in your head, but anyway, that's a longer discussion, and I think this is a perfect clip. It's actually on our social media, and there was so many powerful things that came out of 2 different interviews I did with Geraldine. But this one, she was just schooling me basic, and it's one of the things that drove my understanding of Wounded Knee, because she's part of that kinship structure and network, and she just did what she had to do, and was unapologetic about it. But she's not covered in a lot of the history because she's part of this powerful network of women who were the ones that really were matriarchs to others and helped folks. And there's a lot more names to say, and more histories to do there. Unfortunately, we've lost a lot of people, and Geraldine did walk on. She passed away, and now the goal is just talking to as many people as we can to keep collecting these histories. But in this clip, in particular, she just talks about, the impact of Wounded Knee and that how powerful it was to stand up, and the way the American Indian movement came in to support when invited and asked to come in to stop the violence and the corruption that was happening with the tribal government at the time. And she talks particularly about how AIM brought identity back, and what she means by that, and it's just grassroots, straight up. And that's the first thing that she also talks about, how this group of women would, while everybody else was doing other things, they were standing in front of the BIA or the tribal headquarters, and holding signs and protesting while the federal, FBI and federal agents at least were, had guns trained on them. And so with Geraldine, we're going to watch this clip, and then the next thing that we're going to take a 10-minute break, starting with this clip being played, and then while you're all taking a little break, we're going to be announcing the door prizes that you win for coming to our virtual space. So we're going to run that, come back, and then we're going to finish out the second 45 to 50 minutes of this event. So stay with us, and thank you. Part 1, come back.
My name is Geraldine Janice. I'm an Oglala Sioux from the Pine Ridge Reservation, and I've been here my whole life. I never went into Wounded Knee, but I helped get food out there with people, or we'd help take the elderlies back out there because they wanted to check on their homes. So we'd take them out, but it was just like a war, you know. There was military out there, you know, them big tanks all around the place. There was marshals all over, and just the women was out there fighting, you know. We'd try to do marches, and they'd hit some of our women that were marching in from the tribal office, and no one cared about us. But after AIM came in, then he got the marshals in here. It was war against us, and we didn't have no kind of ammunition or anything. The people were all for AIM, but they didn't want to come forward, you know. But behind, silently, they were for them, and everybody helped them when they were inside of Wounded Knee. The good thing that came out of it, with all the news media here and all our volunteer lawyers, you know, we were known worldwide, and how we lived and what was going on here. So that was good. But the kids at least got their identity back, and the Lakota spirituality, and something they could be proud of, because there's nothing to be proud of around here, you know. They came in with braids and long hair. They weren't ashamed of it, you know. So the kids said, gee, you know, they could do that. We can. And you still see it. AIM did one good thing. It gave the Indian their identity back.
Really?
And their culture, their spirituality. And they thought they were heroes, the leaders, you know. The children looked up to them.
Okay. Oh boy. That does look good. Hi everybody, welcome back. So this is the door prize fun time, and I wanted to, you know, try to subtly ask you all to give us money. So we need to spread the word that we're really trying to support everything that you're hearing here and all the plans that we have, which you can see in our social media, on our website. But we're trying to build as many grassroots, accountable oral history projects that reflect the power of stories never heard, that are also used to transform that master narrative, right? So it's important all across the way. And that's what we do at the Warrior Women Project. After these 20 years of the oral histories done with the women of the Red Power movement in the 1970s and ongoing, we combine community-based scholarship, research, and activism, and making media. Because ultimately the idea too is that we want these oral histories to be as powerful, to do what we can to translate how powerful it is to experience sitting there and hearing someone's story to you by making media that is engaging. So that's all part of our goals here at the Warrior Women Project, which is why we ask you to join us for these. And those of you who can, of course, could donate some money, and we appreciate it very much. One of the things that we did do, though, is put all of you who registered your name in for 10 gifts. And those 10 people who are going to get our two most popular items, which is a bumper sticker and a pin, are the following people. Matilde. Well, this is a part that's exciting as I destroy your names, and I do so with great apologies. Liacre, or Liacre, Liacre, Judy Denberth, Valerie Shirley, Patricia Matthews. You'll all be contacted, by the way. Selena Lewis, Michelle Hubble, Jessica Garcia Fritz, Margaret Ayala, Virginia Morris, and Patricia Young. So 5 of you who were kind enough to make a donation of $50 or more will get your choice of t-shirts. We have Standing Rock. We have Warrior Women, as you can see right here. We have the Warren t-shirt, which our wonderful facilitator, Dawnee LeBeau, is wearing, and she will show you when we come back. And you will also get our handmade lotion and bar of soap and the rest of the button and the sticker. Everybody loves the soap, our Rebel lotion, and our lotion is fantastic. Here's a citrus sage and citrus sage lotion. And then finally, to explain why this is on my head, it's very warm, it's lovely, and my mother hand knits them. She's in the back right now. In fact, I think knitting one of them, and she's holding it up. This is your hand knit Warrior Woman headband, and that goes to Katerina Bamardi. And our gifts of t-shirts, our little bundle, goes to Sally Hazard, Deborah Hamilton, Ellen, Aliena, can't quite read it, but Benito Garza and Lisa Sparrow. So with that, I'm going to move out of the screen here, and we're going to hand this over for a focused period of time where Lakota is going to talk about the matriarchs in her life, specifically who you've heard some about so far, which is Grandma Twinkle Star. And then we will all come back and you will hear us again and we'll be answering your questions. So thank you.
Thank you for this, because it's a wonderful gift to be able to see my family on this social media format, but it's also sad because of COVID, I haven't been able to travel and I haven't been able to come home, and so it makes me miss them even more. And I think that's part of what I'm saying, is that our connection to the land, our connection to everything around us, the trees, the grasses of the plains, everything, it speaks to us. It's a part of us. The water of the streams there, the Missouri River, all of those things are relatives as well. And so for me, my entire life, either I was living there or I was living here in Alaska. My mother brought us here when I was young, and would go there in the summer. So both places, my relatives are these trees and the ground and the water and the wind and the stars, everything. And so that's been a big part of one of the things that I learned. I remember my Uncle Ted, when I first went to UC Berkeley, and I told him I was scared. And he said, well, remember, always remember where you come from. That never leaves you. And, my whole family reassured me about these things. And one of the things, we were talking about Grandma Twinkle Star, of course, at the beginning, because she was our original matriarch. I was put in boarding school like my rest of my family when I was 7, and it was something that really marked me for my whole life. It's affected me, all of my issues and stuff. There's a picture of me when I was 10, when they had this play, and all the white townsfolk would come, and they'd put us in these fake dresses and look at our faces like nobody, you could tell we weren't home. We were friends with each other, but having to put those on was humiliating. It wasn't how we really dress, and we were we were showing them the stereotype. And that was part of what's been hard about being Native. You could take that down now. Is that people have all these expectations of us, and even our own people don't know, as we're talking about these younger people. But for me, what helped, besides what I was living, was Grandma Twinkle Star. Again, that picture that I was showing, she would come and get me on weekends when I was 7, and I would stay with her, and she would keep her aunt, her mother, Grandma Aggie, who was my great great grandmother, and she was 97 when I was 7. And I would sleep with her because they had a fire that would go out at night. That was the heating in those days. And so I would sleep with her because I was warm. And so we would talk all night because old people don't sleep that much. And she would tell me about this place, about this land, because she was a child pre-contact. She was a child before the invasion. And she talked about how warm it was in the teepee, that they were never cold, all these different things and what they would do. And all I remember was seeing this magical land of when we were free. And one of the things that she said to me was, don't worry, we're going to, because she remembered a lot of things. And she would say, don't worry, because I'd say, I want to go there. I didn't want to go back to boarding school, right? Can we go there? I want to go where you were. And she'd say, we'll get there. Don't worry, we'll get there. And she would talk about it. And I think, okay, we're going to get there. We're going to be there again. And so in my young life, preteen life, it was the racism and the abuse and all the things that was happening, and especially in boarding school. I would say, well, this is only temporary, because that's what she would say. We'll get there again. This is only temporary. This government's just an infant. It's not very old, and it's recent, and it's temporary. So those teachings, and with Grandma Twinklestar and her kindness and talking about our strengths and what our responsibility is, and that spirituality, it was true spirituality. She was a Christian, and she was a true spiritual being. We all got to learn that from her, how to have that relationship with spirit and to acknowledge the spirit inside ourselves. So in boarding school, I learned to survive. I learned to speak up, because the nuns, we were like a herd of cattle to them. They didn't even see us as human beings. And you're with all these, what felt like hundreds of other little girls, little brown girls, and they were abusive. And one time I remember we got caught doing something, and they came and was about to whip us. And I spoke up and I said, that was an accident. And I just spoke continuously about why it was an accident and tried to explain everything to the nun, and she didn't whip us. So at that point, it occurred to me that if we speak up, we can change things. We can change the outcome. And there's more to that story, but from Grandma Twinklestar and from Grandma Aggie, I had that vision in my head that things are going to change. And then with Wounded Knee, with Alcatraz, with everything that Madonna and Mable were involved in, I saw that change happening. And so for me, it was, I saw both sides. That was the other thing, is my mother and Grandma Theo were really intent on me getting an education, a formal education. And so when it came to AIM school and survival school, I was sort of the teacher because I had formal education, and I was the one that insisted Marcy go to college and make sure, because we needed to know that information as well. And what I learned from being in both worlds was, no matter where our people were, whether they were lawyers or, or on the res, wherever they were, we all had effects of the trauma of, and this was back in the 70s, people weren't using the word trauma-informed care like they are now. This was a long time ago when people weren't even looking at how genocide affected our people. But for me, that was important. And I did study, and I wanted to say something because somebody wrote in the comments about white culture, Native culture is so amazing, white culture is so bad. Everybody needs to search their culture, because when I was in AIM school, I was thinking, what happened to them? How come they're so disconnected from everything? How can they exploit the mother this way? How can they, put uranium in the water? All these things, because we were doing water testing learning to do these things because it was necessary. And so I started studying Europe, like what happened to them. And I learned about their medicine women who were burned and then demonized and called witches when they were healers originally. I started to learn about the Druid traditions and, all of these things that St. Patrick was we have people like that came here and just killed the Indian people and terrorized us into being Christian. That's what St. Patrick was for the Druids, for the earth culture of Ireland. Anyway, so I learned those things and realized they had the same culture as we did. And so it's important for all of us to claim that, to let go of, oh, my culture is bad. Oh, my ancestors were, some of your ancestors tried their best and did their best, no matter what it was. We don't read about that. But I learned a lot of those things by studying other people's culture. And I've dedicated my life in helping that healing. I have a decolonization group that meets every week here. I've been doing decolonization workshops, unlearning racism workshops. So we all have a lot of work to do to indigenize ourselves as Indigenous people, re-indigenize, and to decolonize.
Thank you, Lakota. And again, thank you for hanging in here with us. It is really hard to have you over there and not here. And thank you for just being a good sport, as we all are. But basically, the last thing you were talking about in particular, just in terms of bringing us all into the discussion, is especially with sort of how things function like Women of All Red Nations and the work that you all did. That story is still so largely untold. It's sort of referenced quickly in a history book and the date is always wrong. But it lives on already in intergenerational legacies of organizing and matriarchy. So I wanted to sort of give that, I feel like I killed the flow, but Marcy, spice it up a bit. Tell us why Warren lives on and how, and
I think Warren was really powerful because it was focused in community, and that was the difference between the work that the women were doing and the work that the men were doing. And that is kind of based in our ancestral teachings. Because the community, the village that our people lived in, that was the property or, the domain of the women. Outside of that was the domain of the men. And I think that was something that was evident during the movement. The men, and, that's a book titled Men Were the Jawbone, Women Were the Backbone. It was kind of like that. I mean, that was kind of, what it represents is the men were dealing with what was happening on the outside, and the women were dealing with what was going on in our communities, and that's one of the places that Warren focused. And so, looking at Warren covered stuff like sterilization, radiated water, and a whole host of other things. But one of the things I noticed, and Cody tells a story of when, she was heavily involved with AIM, and Mom was teaching her a lot of different things. And so I think those kinds of, the passing on of what was happening, or, how do you carry it on, that kind of thing. I think that's a really good example of what happened, how that happens. And so I want to focus a little bit about what we're doing now. And so one of the things that I and Dawnee are involved in on our reservation is a organization that we formed called, well, it's not really an organization, it's just a community gathering. We decided to call ourselves Najo, which is a Lakota word for whistling in alarm. And we came together because we started seeing the effects of human trafficking on and around our reservation. And so we just, I contacted Dawnee and I said, hey, we should have a meeting about this. Do you think this is a concern? And she said, yeah, definitely. So she made a flyer, we hung it up, and people showed up. And every time we met, more people showed up and more. So it was definitely an issue in our community that people were witnessing, this kind of violence happening. So as a result of that, our group has had witness training. So you learn how to be a witness when you're witnessing some kind of violent situation. So we all had that. We had one self-defense class and one gun safety class. And then the pandemic hit, so we haven't been able to get together anymore. But this is an organization that, we're still meeting and we're still gathering information. And one of the things that we did was get our council to pass a resolution to declare a state of emergency for women and children on our reservation. And then currently we're doing patrols in our community where we patrol on weekends from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. And we all have whistles and we just, patrol our communities for violence. And I'll let Dawnee share too, because she's part of it too. But I wanted to share that because that's some of the work that's going on currently in our community.
So I'll just share a little bit about Marcella. When we first formed our group, it was mostly women, and then the grandmothers group came in and they offered that legacy of support that we've been talking about this whole time, the matriarch support, the kinship support, and that just means so much to us as Lakota community. And the other part of that is when we're out doing the patrols, we're also doing documentation of why we're doing it and who is involved and why they feel that it's important. And so all these pieces are going to be put together and going to be utilized by hopefully the next generation. So there's some sustainability there and a purpose, of course. So, yeah. I guess my next question is speaking to Warren and Marjol and how the grandmothers see that as a legacy and how you feel about that. And whoever wants to go first.
Well, I think it's really, really important that we think of it, especially with the whole headline issue, because of the man camps that were on the horizon, that they were building not far from our borders. It just made the situation worse because we already had, that trafficking issue going on in our area, but it was just worse with the threat of man camp. Obvious. But not only that, I think it just helps our community realize that we can do things on a community level and work with tribal law enforcement. It doesn't have to be, call the cops, It's more of a community involvement, more important on that level, And so I think that's really, really important. And then it's really good for us elders, to see the next generation people up and organizing and stuff, and just letting them know that we're so proud of them, and then that we have their back and support them. It's just a traditional thing. That's what people have always done.
I think, Marjo, looking back to our Warren work and how Marjo is community-based, that's really important. And what I can see is, sure, we have different domestic violence programs, you know, all those kind of resources on the reservation. But knowing our people, and especially our women and the way they think, if they have a community member to turn to, they're gonna more likely do that, you know, somebody they know the other day, whatever. Then, so I think being community-based, having just ordinary women in walks of life doing this, you know, that to me it's kind of real reassuring to them. You know, about exactly what Madonna said about the grandmothers. Being a matriarch, you know, that's a new word, like she said, but being in this position, being able to live this long, to become to that stage, to be an elder woman. There's a lot of things that we have to do, that's our responsibility. And just by showing up, showing by example, that's really important. And letting people know in my little penthouse community that I'm there. And my grandma's there for you because we need that. You know, and it's you know, and the able to do that with them. But there again, having the support of your elders always, so we had that support when we were young. And so in turn, that's what we want to show. And then in turn, you guys are going to be doing what we're doing. It's going to go on. You know, getting our society back authentic, giving our roles, rebuilding that, you know, is so important.
I also want to share too that the grandmothers group, Washagya Naji is grandmothers standing strong. Have been involved with a lot of different projects, and if you watch the film, my mother taught. There's a whole piece in there of her talking about child welfare and the issues there. So the grandmothers group has been in partnership with a nonprofit that's on our reservation, and they are Simply Smiles out of Connecticut. And after I'll tell you a little bit how we ended up with that relationship. After Standing Rock, I needed a job, and Simply Smiles would come every summer to our reservation and provide youth programming, summer youth programming. And one of the things they did is they built a big, you know, hoop house and garden beds and all that, and they needed a garden manager. So I applied, and so I started working there, and then, you know, my mom came over and checked it out, and so she got to meet Brian Nurnberger. He's the CEO of Simply Smiles. And then, you know, ended up, they came over to Mom's house, and we all ate together, and she shared the story of the child welfare issues going on our res. And so Brian was, you know, he was like, oh, well, he started thinking, what can I do? What can we do as Simply Smiles? What can we do to help? And so as a result of that communication and collaboration, there is now a Simply Smiles Children's Village being built on our reservation in the little community of La Plante, and it's specifically for children who need foster homes that are going through our tribal court system. And so this village will have 6 homes. Right now there's 1 home that's complete and ready. The second home is very close to being done, and the third home is coming in August. So we're currently looking for foster parents. And so if you go to simplysmiles.org, you can see everything there. You could see the homes. The application is there if you're interested in being a foster parent. And I do want to say that this is a big ask because we're asking people to come to our reservation in the middle of, there's a store and a school. But, it's out in the prairie, and we're asking people to come and basically raise our children who have been traumatized through the system or whatever. So we know it's a big ask, but we also are focusing on professional. We're calling it a professional foster parent because Simply Smiles will provide all the training. We provide the home. Of course, you'll move into a beautiful new home, and then we provide the food. We pay all the bills. There's a vehicle on site that you can use if you need to go somewhere. Plus, you have support if you wanted to go to school or, if there's something you wanted to do, then we have part-time parents. Like, that's not what we're calling them, but, if you needed to go somewhere, then we have a pool of people who can come in and be there for a few hours while you're gone, whatever. We have the grandmothers group that will be providing support in a host of different ways. Spiritual or cultural, or just being there as the grandma, because sometimes some of these kids that's what they remember is their grandma was good to them, or their grandpa, or whoever. So it's really, you have a lot of support coming from the community, so that you're not just like, here you go, good luck. It's not like that. So if you want more, so this is a collaboration that we're really proud of and excited about, because it will have an impact on what's happening to our future generations right there on our reservation. It's also one of the only, it's a one of a kind situation. So we're really excited about that because it's going to actually have an impact. But we need the parents. We're also looking for. We want to hire 3 clinical psychologists, hopefully native, so that we have one that will be working with the children, one that will be working with the biological parents, and one that will be working with the parents living on site, who are the kinship parents or foster parents. So we're looking at, trying to provide as much support to the adults so that the focus is on the kids.
Thank you, Marcy. We need to bring in Lakota to answer this last question.
Everyone's looking at, did I get asked a question? I can't hear it if you did. I can't hear anything, so I'm just letting you know.
Okay, good. Tell me what the question is.
So the question a long time ago was, who remembers what the question was? It was about, there was a Warren legacy to Najo, it's matriarchy, what you're doing now. Just weighing in. I don't have, what do you want to ask that specifically?
I would like you to tell your story of Warren, your experience.
Oh yeah, I'm a co-founder of Warren. The thing about growing up in our family is that it's hard. Just so you know, it's hard because they mute you guys and I don't hear anything, and so then now all of a sudden I can't hear anything. But when Warren was formed, the thing that I was thinking about when you were talking was that the men in our family were not threatened by strong women. They were used to strong women. And so our cousins, our extended family, that was the biggest difference, I think, of what I see in the wide world, was that the men in our family knew that we had roles, that we were, so they came to us for advice. They came to us to tell them what to do sometimes, because they knew that we were brilliant. I mean, we had that support. I think about that a lot because they weren't threatened by strong women. They weren't threatened by smart women. And that's kind of what seems to be wrong with the world out there, because women are so powerful. And so that's the thing that we saw, growing up, was all these powerful women and amazing women, just how much women can handle, how much women can contain and still think clearly through all of it. That's what I saw. And so when Warren was formed, the very first conference we had, women came from all over the country, and they were already had a legacy of third, fourth generations resistance families. And when we traveled as the survival school, that's what we saw. We'd go to this territory or that territory, the different parts of all of over Turtle Island, that it was families that were the resistance. It was families in the movement. And so when Warren was formed, that's what we focused on, was kind of what was already happening and how things have been traditionally. And so for us in our little corner of, in the heart of, Turtle Island, the issues that were in front of us were so important. And what we learned early on was we needed allies. And so that has been sort of the direction I went, because I was one of the first ones to go up and join the Black Hills Alliance, which was, when they were talking lately about the first Native White Alliance. I thought, no, there was a Native White Alliance, and I became relatives, with Lilius Jardine and Colleen Reagan and all these other people to this day are my sisters, because Mark Kammerer, I remember when him and my mom had the birthday cake together, so it's like you create Tioshwaya, you create families, and that's what Warren was about, mostly was, and supporting each other and figuring out how we do that. So for me, the alliance building part was really important, because we had the I can't think of the names right now, but the alliances, people who supported us, who had their own white groups that would support us, and they'd have to work with themselves so that they weren't, because the thing about allies is people come in with all their wounds and they say, oh, I'm so sorry what happened to your people, and they have all this stuff going on. Anyway, I think I'm supposed to keep this short, but there's a lot of work to do internally, because that's what I saw was, we're strong, we survived it, but we also have to do internal work to be able to unlearn the things that get in our way and that stop us. So thank you. That's I know we got to move on, and I can't hear anything, so I hope that was good.
Thumbs up.
Yay!
I feel like I'm stuck in the corner.
Thanks everybody for being with us today. Does anybody have any final comments? We'll start with Marcy and move this way, and close out with Lakota, and then come back to me, please.
Okay, so I just want to say thank you everybody for joining us, and I hope you enjoyed the time we could share together. Hope you love. Doksha.
I'm glad that, everybody could join also, and I hope that some of the stuff we shared will be able to help you in your walk of life. Whatever that may be.
Yeah, I want to thank everybody. To me, this is still, I really get excited about this, because look what's happening. It's this technology nowadays. It's more than just a Zoom. We get to talk, and you're out there. And I'm so thankful that whoever signed up and that you're listening, and hopefully it meant something. And I'm so glad that it happened. Thankful.
So, in a very classy style, my thanking of you is to say, give us your money. It would really help, because it's a capitalist grind. We're still in it to win it. Gas money for grandmas, more oral histories, and getting this material out there, because this is precious and awesome that we get to do this. It's really amazing. But you know, you all have family members. There's people who need to tell their stories. So that's my fundraising pitch. If you go to the website, you can make donations. You know people who might be interested. It really helps. That's how we're making this happen slowly. And you know, each time we're getting a little bit better, and we hope to do this more often in the future. And it would help if you gave us money to do that. So can we switch to Lakota? Can't hear. Who's saying I can't hear you?
Am I on? What I would like to say is I appreciate you, and I really believe that, and I know that when we come together like this, it's a sacred act. And even though it's over, you know, the airwaves, the satellite waves, when we come together, it is a sacred act. It's each time is new, each time is important. And so this was meant to be. This was part of your own path. And we all have a lot of work to do so that you can educate yourself. I mean, I have an auntie that wrote a book about Native resistance. Our uncle Russell Means has a book called Where White Men Fear to Tread. So educate yourself. There's things out there. There's a lot of videos and a lot of this history. Learn. That's the main thing because it's available to you. And the more you learn, you can't unknow it anymore. It changes you each time. So we're all in this together. Everybody needs to be responsible. So thank you all.
Thanks everyone for being with us. We are so grateful for your support and for tuning in. Tulani Ayapi. We hope that you follow us on social media. Visit our shop on warriorwomanfilm.com. Thank you so much. We'll be looking for you. Have a great day. Stay safe and much gratitude. Bye.
We are out.